I am Ruby, 63, a retired school teacher who has always put my children first. Today is my birthday, and we're at this fancy restaurant my successful son, Jackson, chose. My son built a tech empire from nothing, while my daughter, Stephanie, married into wealth. For 6 months now, I've been living in the garage on Jackson's property, though he thinks I'm in that luxury apartment he bought. Before I tell you what happened at that birthday dinner that changed everything, let me know where you're watching from and tap that subscribe button if you've ever felt invisible in your own family. Life hasn't always been easy for me. 28 years ago, my husband Tom died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving me alone with Jackson and Stephanie, who were just 10 and 7 at the time. The life insurance barely covered the funeral and a few months of expenses, and suddenly, I was a single mother with 2 growing children and bills that wouldn't stop coming. I remember sitting at our kitchen table late at night after the kids were asleep, staring at the stack of bills and crying silently so they wouldn't hear me. But I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. My children needed me, so I dried my tears and made a plan. I was already teaching 5th grade at Lincoln Elementary, but the salary wasn't enough to support us. So I took a second job as a bookkeeper for a local hardware store, working evenings after school and weekends whenever I could get hours. My mother would watch the kids when I worked late, bless her heart. We moved from our small house to an even smaller 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of town. It wasn't in the best neighborhood, but it was what we could afford. I gave the kids the bedroom and slept on a pull-out sofa in the living room for years. Every penny that didn't go to necessities went into their college funds. "Mom, why can't we get new shoes like my friends?" Stephanie would ask, always more concerned with appearances than her brother. "Because we're saving for something more important," I'd tell her. "An education that will last much longer than shoes." Jackson understood from an early age. He was a quiet, thoughtful boy who excelled in math and science. While other kids were playing sports or video games, he was taking apart computers and putting them back together. He'd find old discarded electronics, bring them home, and tinker until they worked again. "Mom, look, I fixed Mrs. Peterson's radio. She gave me $5, he announced proudly one day when he was 12. He immediately handed me the money. "For our savings." I pushed it back toward him. "You earned that, Jackson. It's yours." He insisted I take half for our family fund. That was Jackson, always thinking of others, even as a child. Stephanie was different. She was a beautiful child with her father's blue eyes and my auburn hair. In elementary school, she was sweet and loving, always making cards for my birthday or bringing me wildflowers she'd picked. But as she entered her teen years, something shifted. She became increasingly aware of what we didn't have compared to her friends. Our apartment wasn't in the right neighborhood. Her clothes weren't from the right stores. Our car was too old, too embarrassing to be seen in. "Why can't we just be normal?" she would cry after being dropped off a block from school parties so her friends wouldn't see our rusted Civic. "We are normal," I'd say. "We just have different priorities right now." But to a teenager desperate to fit in, my words meant nothing. She started babysitting and using every cent on clothes and makeup, trying to keep up with her wealthier friends. I worried about her values, but told myself it was just a phase. Jackson, meanwhile, won a partial scholarship to State University to study computer science. I was so proud, I cried when the letter came. The scholarship, combined with his savings from odd jobs and the college fund I'd scraped together, made it possible. He worked throughout college, graduating with minimal debt and immediately landing a job at a cybersecurity firm. 3 years later, at just 25, he started his own company, Secure, now focusing on innovative security solutions for small businesses. The early years were lean. He lived in a tiny studio apartment and worked around the clock. I'd send him care packages with homemade cookies and socks, worrying he wasn't taking care of himself. "Mom, stop worrying," he'd say during our weekly calls. "The company's growing. One day I'll buy you a house with a garden full of those roses you love." I thought he was just dreaming the way children do. Stephanie took a different path. She went to community college for a year, then dropped out to work as a receptionist at a prestigious law firm where she met Harold. 10 years her senior, he was an up-and-coming attorney from a good family with the right connections. Within 6 months, they were engaged. Their wedding was lavish, far beyond what I could contribute to. Harold's parents paid for most of it, a fact Stephanie made sure everyone knew was completely normal. I wore a dress I'd saved for months to buy and felt out of place among the designer gowns and expensive jewelry. "Mom, couldn't you have done something more with your hair?" Stephanie whispered, just before the ceremony, her perfect updo making my simple style seem dowdy by comparison. I swallowed the hurt. It was her day, after all. The years passed. Jackson's company grew steadily, gaining recognition for its innovative approaches and excellent service. By the time he was 35, he had offices in 3 cities and over 50 employees. He met Maria, a kind-hearted pediatric nurse, who loved him for who he was, not what he had. They married in a simple ceremony in Maria's parents' backyard, with fairy lights in the trees and homemade food. "This is perfect," Jackson said, hugging me tightly at the reception. "Just family and friends who care about us, not a show for people to impress." I couldn't help comparing it to Stephanie's extravaganza. When their twins, Emma and Ethan, were born 3 years later, Jackson and Maria bought a beautiful house with a garden apartment they offered to me. "You should be close to your grandchildren," Jackson insisted. I declined, not wanting to impose on their new family, though I visited often. The twins were the light of my life. Curious, kind-hearted children who inherited their parents' best qualities. Stephanie and Harold, meanwhile, moved into an exclusive neighborhood and joined the right clubs. They had no children. "Not part of our lifestyle plan," Stephanie would say dismissively when asked. They took exotic vacations and drove luxury cars, their social media a carefully curated display of their perfect life. What nobody saw were the cracks beneath the surface. Harold's firm had passed him over for partner twice. Their lavish lifestyle had created significant debt. Stephanie had confided in me during a rare, vulnerable moment that they were house poor, their mortgage and maintenance on their showcase home consuming most of their income. "But we can't downsize," she'd said, panic in her voice. "What would people think?" As I approached retirement, my own situation became increasingly precarious. My teacher's pension would barely cover the basics, and the rent on my apartment kept rising. Worse, my arthritis was making the 3 flights of stairs to my unit nearly impossible some days. I'd sit in my car in the parking lot, gathering strength to make the painful climb. I didn't tell my children about my recent mild heart scare. The doctor said it was likely stress-related, but the medical bills had taken a chunk of my modest savings. I didn't want to worry them, especially Jackson, who had his hands full with the business and young children. "You need to reduce stress and take better care of yourself," my doctor advised. Easier said than done when you're living on a fixed income with rising costs. I was running out of options, but determined to maintain my independence. I'd taken care of my family all these years. I wasn't about to become a burden now. It was about 6 months ago when Jackson called me out of the blue on a Tuesday afternoon. "Mom, are you free for dinner tonight? I need to discuss something with you." His tone was serious enough to worry me. "Is everything all right with the kids? With Maria?" "Everything's fine," he assured me. "Just some business news I want to share in person." We met at a quiet Italian restaurant we both loved. Jackson looked tired, but excited, a combination I'd seen often during his company's growth phases. After ordering, he took a deep breath. "Mom, I sold Secure now." I nearly dropped my water glass. "Your company, the one you built from nothing." He nodded, a mix of emotions crossing his face. "A larger security firm made an offer I couldn't refuse. I'm staying on as a consultant for 3 years, but essentially, I'm done." "Jackson, I don't know what to say. Are you happy about this?" "It's bittersweet," he admitted. "But the timing is right. The twins are starting kindergarten, and I've missed too much already. And Mom," his eyes lit up. The sale price was $28 million. I literally couldn't speak. My son, my Jackson, who once collected cans for recycling money, was now a millionaire many times over. "I know," he laughed, seeing my expression. "I can hardly believe it myself. But that's not why I wanted to talk to you. I've made my first investment with part of the money." "Oh," I tried to sound normal, still processing the news. "I bought an apartment building, the Willows on Parkview Drive. Do you know it?" I nodded slowly. The Willows was one of the most prestigious addresses in town, with doormen and a concierge, far beyond anything I could ever afford. "There's a beautiful 2-bedroom on the 4th floor with a view of the park. It's yours, Mom." I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "Mine. You've sacrificed everything for us for years. It's time you had something beautiful for yourself. The building has an elevator, so no more stairs with your arthritis. There's 24-hour security, a gym, a community room. It's perfect." "Jackson, I can't accept that. It's too much. It's not a gift, it's an investment in family," he insisted. "I'll own the building either way. Would you rather a stranger lived there? All expenses will be covered. It's part of my property management arrangement. Please, Mom, let me do this for you." I had tears in my eyes. My practical, generous son had thought of everything. With my healthcare costs rising and rent eating most of my pension, this would change everything. Still, I hesitated. "What will Stephanie think? She might feel it's unfair." Jackson's expression tightened slightly. "This isn't about Stephanie. It's about taking care of you." Reluctantly, I agreed to see the apartment. It was more beautiful than I could have imagined. Spacious and bright, with large windows overlooking the park, where I'd taken my children to play when they were small. The kitchen gleamed with new appliances. The bathroom had a walk-in shower with a built-in seat that would be perfect for my bad days. "It's lovely," I whispered, afraid to touch anything. "It's yours," Jackson said simply. "When can you move in?" In the end, I accepted. How could I not? My apartment lease was ending, and the stairs were becoming impossible. Jackson arranged for professional movers and insisted on buying me new furniture as a housewarming gift. Everything seemed perfect until the family dinner where Jackson shared the news with Stephanie and Harold. "You bought Mom an apartment at the Willows." Stephanie's voice was sharp with disbelief. "Isn't that excessive? And how is that fair to me?" "Life isn't about keeping score," Jackson replied evenly. "Mom needs a place without stairs, with security close to her grandchildren. But the Willows' mom wouldn't be comfortable there. Those people are different." The way she said it made clear she meant wealthy. Ironically, the very thing she and Harold pretended to be. "I think I can manage," I interjected, uncomfortable with being discussed as if I weren't present. After dinner, I overheard Stephanie and Jackson in heated conversation on the terrace. I couldn't hear everything, but phrases drifted through the open window. Too much too fast. Overwhelming for someone her age. Can't handle luxury living. Better solution. Later, Jackson approached me with an altered plan. "Mom, I've been thinking. Before you move into the Willows, maybe a transition would be good. We have a garage apartment on our property. It's small, but comfortable. You could stay there while the main apartment is being renovated to better suit your needs." Something felt off. "What renovations? The apartment is perfect as it is. Just some accessibility modifications," he said vaguely. "It wouldn't take more than a few months." I didn't want to seem ungrateful or create family tension. "If you think that's best." The garage apartment turned out to be exactly that. A converted garage with a small bathroom addition. It had been used primarily as Jackson's home office and occasional guest quarters. There was a futon that converted to a bed, a mini-fridge microwave, and hot plate that constituted the kitchen, and a tiny bathroom with a shower stall. "It's just temporary," Jackson assured me, looking slightly uncomfortable. 6 months at most, while we customize your actual apartment." I smiled and thanked him, hiding my disappointment. I wouldn't complain. This was still a generous offer, and being close to the twins would be wonderful. I moved in with the essentials, storing most of my belongings in Jackson's basement. A week after I'd settled in, Stephanie came to visit, bringing a housewarming plant and inspecting the space with barely concealed satisfaction. "This is much more appropriate," she declared. "The Willows would have been too overwhelming. All those rich people looking down on you." "Your brother thought I'd like it," I said mildly. "Brothers don't always know best," she replied with a strange smile. "This is cozy, manageable. I'll check on you regularly to make sure you're comfortable." She did visit regularly, unlike before, when months would pass between visits. She'd bring leftovers from their dinner parties, take photos of me in the garage apartment, and always ask if I was still happy with the arrangement. What could I say? That the concrete floors made my arthritis scream at night, that the space heater barely kept the winter chill at bay, that the summer heat was becoming unbearable as spring turned to summer, that washing dishes in the tiny bathroom sink was humiliating, that I had to go to the laundromat 2 miles away because I couldn't keep imposing on Jackson and Maria for laundry. No, I said nothing. I was grateful for a roof over my head and proximity to my grandchildren. I wouldn't complain. Months passed. Jackson mentioned the renovations occasionally, but never with specific details. He was traveling more for the consulting work, and I suspected Stephanie was managing the communications about my living situation. Whenever I asked about the apartment, she'd say something vague about contractor delays or permit issues. 6 months stretched on with no end in sight. I made the best of it, decorating the small space with family photos and the few treasures I'd kept from my teaching days. I created a tiny container garden outside the door. I welcomed Emma and Ethan for visits, making the cramped quarters seem like an adventure. "Grandma's tiny house is like a secret hideout," Ethan declared, building a fort from the spare blankets I kept for cold nights. "Can we bring you something to make it prettier?" Emma asked, her compassionate heart already developed at 5. "Your visits are all I need to make it beautiful," I told them truthfully. The twins innocently asked why I didn't live in a normal house like everyone else. I created a story about choosing a simpler life, about the joy of having just what you need and nothing more. I didn't want them to know their grandmother was essentially living in a storage shed, while their wealthy father apparently believed I was in luxury accommodations. The truth was, I was struggling more than I let on. The space was physically wearing on my health. The damp concrete aggravated my arthritis. The lack of proper cooking facilities meant I ate too many microwave meals, not good for my heart. The isolation, tucked behind Jackson's main house, away from neighbors, left me lonely when the family wasn't around. But I said nothing. Jackson was busy with his new consulting role in the twins. Maria was kind, but had her hands full with her nursing schedule and the children. And Stephanie seemed almost pleased by my circumstances, bringing me her cast-offs as if they were treasures. "These plates weren't right for our dining room," she'd say, delivering a box of discards. "But they're perfect for your situation." Each comment reinforced the reality in her mind I deserved less. I was less. After a lifetime of sacrificing for my children, I had become an inconvenience to be managed. As my birthday approached, I tried to maintain a positive outlook. 63 wasn't so old. I still had time to create a better life somehow. Maybe once the mysterious renovations were complete. I had no idea that my birthday dinner would change everything. Jackson insisted on celebrating my birthday at La Maison, the most expensive restaurant in town. The kind of place where the menu doesn't list prices, and the waiters wear white gloves. I felt out of place in my simple dress and costume jewelry, but Jackson assured me I looked beautiful. "Nothing but the best for my mom," he said, hugging me as we entered. We were seated at a prime table near the windows. I noticed other diners in designer clothes, diamonds glittering under the chandeliers. I smoothed my department store dress self-consciously. "Stop worrying," Jackson whispered, noticing my discomfort. "You belong here as much as anyone." Maria and the twins had created handmade cards for me, which I carefully placed in my purse to treasure later. Jackson had already given me his gift that morning, a beautiful cashmere sweater in my favorite shade of blue. "For when it gets chilly," he'd said, not knowing how chilly the garage apartment actually got at night. We were halfway through our appetizers when Stephanie and Harold arrived, fashionably late as usual. Stephanie wore a designer dress I'd seen in magazines, her neck and wrists heavy with jewelry. Harold looked uncomfortable in his expensive suit, his smile tight as he handed me a small, elegantly wrapped package. "Sorry we're late," Stephanie announced to the table. "Traffic from our side of town was dreadful." She air-kissed my cheek, careful not to smudge her perfect makeup, then settled into her chair with a practiced flourish. "Happy birthday, Mother," she said, pushing a large gift bag across the table. I picked it out myself from that boutique on 5th Street. Inside was a gaudy, decorative vase, clearly expensive, but not at all to my taste. It screamed discount luxury, the kind of thing bought to impress rather than to please the recipient. "It's very unique," I managed, setting it aside. "For your living space," she said with a strange emphasis, to add a touch of class. Jackson frowned slightly, but said nothing. The conversation moved on to safer topics. The twins' kindergarten adventures, Jackson's latest consulting project, Harold's golf game. Stephanie dominated, as she always did, with stories of their recent vacation to Cabo and the exclusive parties they'd attended. The Andersons' benefit gala was simply magnificent, she gushed. Everyone who matters was there. I nodded and smiled, feeling increasingly invisible. On my birthday, in this beautiful restaurant, surrounded by family. I felt utterly alone. Dessert arrived, a delicate chocolate cake with a single candle. The server informed us it was complimentary for the birthday celebration. Jackson ordered champagne for a toast. As the bubbling glasses were distributed, Jackson raised his. To my amazing mother, who sacrificed everything so Stephanie and I could have opportunities she never had, who taught us the value of hard work, honesty, and kindness. I wouldn't be who I am today without you, Mom. Here, Harold murmured politely. To Mom, Stephanie added with a tight smile. I blinked back tears, touched by Jackson's words. As we sipped our champagne, Jackson turned to me with a casual smile. By the way, Mom, I've been meaning to ask, have you been enjoying the apartment? I know the Willows can be a bit stuffy with all those rules, but the amenities make up for it, right? The table fell silent. Stephanie's face went white. Harold suddenly became very interested in his dessert fork. The apartment? I asked, confused. At the Willows. I know 6 months is a long time to wait for renovations, but has the original apartment been comfortable? Otherwise, the doorman mentioned he rarely sees you. I looked from Jackson's genuinely confused face to Stephanie's panicked one, and suddenly understood. He didn't know. He had no idea I'd been living in a converted garage for 6 months. He truly believed I was in the luxury apartment he'd purchased. Son, I said quietly, I live in the garage. The silence that followed was deafening. Stephanie's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, crashing onto her plate and shattering. Champagne splashed across her expensive dress, but she didn't even notice. What? Jackson's voice was dangerously soft. The garage apartment on your property. I clarified, heart pounding. I've been living there since you offered me the place at the Willows. I was told it was temporary, while renovations were being done on the main apartment. Jackson's face darkened. There are no renovations. The apartment has been move-in ready since I bought the building. All eyes turned to Stephanie, who was frantically blotting her dress with a napkin. Stephanie, Jackson's voice was controlled, but tight with anger. What's going on? I don't know what Mom's talking about, she stammered. She must be confused. You know how she gets. I am not confused, I said firmly, years of suppressed frustration finally surfacing. You told Jackson I couldn't handle luxury living. You convinced him the garage apartment would be better for me. For 6 months, I've been living with concrete floors that make my arthritis unbearable, a space heater that barely works, and a hot plate instead of a kitchen, while apparently you told your brother I was living in the apartment he bought for me. Harold was staring at his wife in shock. Stephanie, what have you done? Nothing. I was looking out for Mom's best interests. That fancy apartment would have been too much for her to manage. That wasn't your decision to make, Jackson said, his voice rising. And it doesn't explain why you lied to me for months, why you let our mother live in a converted garage when she could have been comfortable. Stephanie's face crumpled, but I'd seen her fake tears too many times to be moved. I was trying to help moms from a different generation. She wouldn't fit in at the Willows. So you decided a garage was more suitable? Jackson was nearly shouting now. Other diners were turning to stare. It's a perfectly nice garage apartment, Stephanie insisted. I fixed it up myself. You brought me your discarded housewares and a space heater that trips the circuit breaker if I use it with the hot plate. I corrected her. Jackson turned to me, his expression stricken. Mom, I had no idea. Why didn't you say something? I looked down at my hands, weathered from years of work. I didn't want to seem ungrateful. You've done so much already. And I thought you knew. That maybe you agreed with Stephanie that it was more appropriate for someone like me. Someone like you, Jackson repeated incredulously. Mom, you're the reason I have anything at all. Everything I've achieved started with your sacrifices. Harold cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we should continue this discussion somewhere more private. He was right. The entire restaurant was watching our family drama unfold. Waiters hovered uncertainly at a distance. There's nothing more to discuss, I said, standing up. My legs were shaking, but my voice was steady. I think I'd like to go home now. Thank you for dinner. Mom, wait, Jackson began. But I was already moving toward the exit. Tears blurred my vision as I stepped outside. I was embarrassed, hurt, and oddly relieved that the truth was finally out. A taxi pulled up, and I gave the driver Jackson's address. As we drove, I let the tears fall freely for the first time in years. How had it come to this? My daughter, my own child, had deliberately kept me in substandard conditions while lying to her brother. Had I failed so completely as a mother that she could treat me with such callous disregard? The garage apartment looked even more depressing when I returned. The worn futon, the tiny refrigerator humming loudly in the corner, the stack of plastic storage containers serving as a makeshift dresser. For 6 months, I'd told myself it was temporary, that it was enough. I'd made excuses for Stephanie's behavior my entire life. No more. I sat on the edge of the futon and felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in decades: anger. Pure, righteous anger. Not just at Stephanie, but at myself for enabling her, for accepting less than I deserved, for being so afraid of burdening others that I'd become invisible. My chest tightened painfully. The doctor's warning about stress echoed in my mind, but I couldn't calm down. Years of repressed emotions were finally breaking through, and my body was paying the price. When morning came, I hadn't slept. Instead, I'd made a decision. I began packing the few belongings I had in the garage apartment. I would find a small place to rent, perhaps a room, in a senior living community. I had enough saved for a deposit somewhere modest. It wouldn't be luxury, but it would be mine, and it would be honest. I wouldn't be a pawn in Stephanie's games anymore. I wouldn't be an obligation to Jackson. I would reclaim my dignity, even if it meant starting over at 63. I was folding my clothes when a knock came at the door. It was early, not even 8 a.m. I opened it to find Jackson, his face haggard from what had clearly been a sleepless night. "Mom," he said hoarsely, "we need to talk." I let Jackson in, painfully aware of how the garage apartment looked in the harsh morning light. The water stain on the ceiling, the extension cords running along the floor to power the mini fridge and microwave, the plastic shower curtain separating the bedroom from the living area. "You're packing," he observed, noticing the half-filled suitcase on the futon. "I think it's time I found my own place," I said quietly. "Something I can manage on my pension." Jackson ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Mom, I spent the entire night trying to understand how this happened. Why didn't you call me, text me, something? I thought you knew, Jackson. Stephanie said you both agreed this was better for me, more appropriate for someone my age and background. And you believed that after everything you thought I would stick my mother in a garage while telling everyone she was in a luxury apartment. Put that way, it did sound absurd." I sat heavily on the futon. "I don't know what I thought. Maybe that you were busy with the twins with your new role, that this was easier. Easier than what giving you the beautiful home you deserve. The one thing I could finally do for you after everything you did for us." He looked around, really seeing the conditions for the first time. "Mom, this is horrible. The floor is bare concrete. How has your arthritis been manageable?" I lied. "And in winter, this place must be freezing." I gestured to the space heater. "It works most nights." "Most nights." He strode to the bathroom, taking in the tiny shower stall, the sink where I washed dishes. I can't believe Stephanie would do this. She's always been status conscious," I said, trying to be fair despite everything. "Maybe she thought she was protecting me from feeling out of place." "This isn't about protection. This is about—" He trailed off, a new thought clearly occurring to him. "Wait, if you've been here all this time, what's happening with the apartment at the Willows?" I shrugged. "I assumed it was being renovated, like Stephanie said." "There are no renovations," Jackson said slowly. "I've been paying the property management company to maintain a fully furnished, unoccupied apartment for 6 months. Maybe there was a misunderstanding," I suggested, still trying to find an explanation that didn't implicate my daughter in deliberate cruelty. Jackson pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. "The property manager has been sending me updates. Regular cleaning service, utility bills." His expression changed. "Wait, there are utility bills. Higher than they should be for an empty apartment." He made a call, putting it on speaker. "Mike, it's Jackson Williams. Quick question about Unit 402 at the Willows. Has anyone been living there?" "Yes, sir," came the reply. "The tenant moved in about 6 months ago. Older lady, keeps to herself. Pays rent on time, no complaints." Jackson's face went pale. "Rent? Someone's paying rent on that unit?" "Yes, sir. $3,000 a month, as agreed." "Is there a problem?" "I never authorized renting that unit. It was purchased for my mother." A long pause. "Sir, we have the paperwork, signed by you authorizing your sister, Stephanie Williams Clark, to handle the rental on your behalf. She said you changed your mind about your mother moving in." Jackson ended the call, his expression thunderous. "She forged my signature. She rented out your apartment and pocketed the money. That's elder abuse. That's fraud." I felt sick. This went beyond Stephanie's usual materialistic behavior. This was calculated deception. "I need to handle this," Jackson said grimly. "Pack your things, Mom. You're not staying here another night." "Jackson," I began, but was interrupted by another knock at the door. It was Stephanie, carrying a large gift bag and wearing a contrite expression that didn't reach her eyes. She froze when she saw Jackson. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice unnaturally high. "I could ask you the same thing," Jackson replied coldly. "Coming to check on your handiwork, or to make sure Mom keeps quiet about living conditions that violate basic housing standards." "Don't be dramatic," Stephanie scoffed, pushing past him into the garage. "Mom and I had an understanding. Right, Mom? This arrangement works for everyone." "It works for you," I said quietly. "It works for you to keep me hidden away while you collect rent on the apartment your brother bought for me." Stephanie's face went blank with shock. "Who told you that?" "That's absurd. There's been a misunderstanding." "The property manager confirmed everything," Jackson said. $3,000 a month for 6 months. $18,000 you've stolen." "I didn't steal anything." Stephanie's voice rose shrilly. "I was managing the property investment. That apartment would have been wasted on Mom. She wouldn't appreciate it. She doesn't belong in a place like that." The words hung in the air, her true feelings finally exposed. "And where does she belong, Stephanie?" Jackson asked dangerously. In a garage, after everything she sacrificed for us, after working 2 jobs to put you through school, after going without so we could have opportunities. That was her job as a parent, Stephanie snapped. She doesn't get a medal for basic parenting, and she didn't do such a great job, or I wouldn't have grown up feeling like a charity case. I flinched as if she'd slapped me. After all these years, this was how she saw my sacrifices. "You ungrateful selfish," Jackson began, but I raised a hand to stop him. "Stephanie," I said calmly, "I understand you resented our circumstances growing up. I'm sorry you felt deprived. But that doesn't justify what you've done as an adult. Lying to your brother, keeping me in these conditions while profiting from it, forging documents. You have no proof of that," she said quickly. "Actually, we do," Jackson countered. "The property management company has the paperwork with my forged signature. That's fraud, Stephanie. Criminal fraud." Stephanie's facade cracked. Panic flashed across her face. "You wouldn't press charges against your own sister." "I wouldn't have thought my sister would steal from me and mistreat our mother, yet here we are." "I wasn't mistreating anyone. Mom was fine here. Tell him, Mom. Tell him you were comfortable." Both turned to me waiting. For so long, I'd played peacekeeper, smoothed things over, accepted less to keep the peace. Not anymore. "No, Stephanie. I wasn't comfortable. My arthritis has worsened from the cold and damp. I've been washing dishes in a bathroom sink. I've been pretending to the twins that living in a converted garage is normal for their grandmother. And all this time, you've been profiting from my discomfort." "That's a lie. I've been checking on you, bringing you things. Your cast-offs. Things you didn't want, while collecting $3,000 a month from the apartment that should have been mine." Her face contorted with rage. "You don't deserve that apartment. You wouldn't fit in there. Those are sophisticated people, not a retired teacher who shops at discount stores. You'd embarrass us all." The room fell silent after her outburst. Even Stephanie seemed shocked by what she'd revealed. "I think," I said with quiet dignity, "that you should leave now, Stephanie." "Fine, but if you make a big deal of this, if you try to involve lawyers or police, I'll make sure you never see your grandchildren again." Jackson stepped toward his sister, his voice dangerously low. "Your desperation is showing. You have no access to my children, and if you ever threaten our mother again, you'll discover exactly how serious I am about pressing charges." Stephanie looked from Jackson's resolute face to mine and realized she'd lost. Her shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of her. "This isn't fair," she muttered. "You always took his side. Always thought he was so perfect. Golden boy Jackson, who could do no wrong." "I loved you both equally," I said sadly. "I still do. But love doesn't mean accepting abuse. Abuse, that's ridiculous. This was a perfectly adequate living situation." "Would you live here?" Jackson challenged. "Would you put Harold in a garage with a hot plate and call it adequate?" Stephanie had no answer for that. She turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard that dust rained down from the ceiling. Jackson looked at me, his expression softening. "Mom, I am so sorry. I should have checked on you more carefully. I should have known something was wrong. You trusted your sister. So did I. Well, that trust is gone now." He pulled out his phone again. "I'm calling my lawyer. What Stephanie did is criminal. She needs to face consequences." A sharp pain shot through my chest, stealing my breath. The stress, the confrontation, the shock of Stephanie's betrayal. It was all too much. "Mom," Jackson's voice sounded far away. "Mom, what's wrong?" I tried to answer, but couldn't form words. The room tilted sideways, and darkness crept in from the edges of my vision. The last thing I heard was Jackson shouting my name and the sound of him frantically dialing 911. I woke up in a hospital room, the steady beeping of monitors filling the silence. Jackson was slumped in a chair beside the bed, his head in his hands. When I stirred, he looked up instantly, relief washing over his tired face. "Mom, thank God. How are you feeling?" My chest still ached, but the crushing pain had subsided. "What happened?" "Stress-induced cardiac event," he said grimly. "Not a full heart attack, but a warning sign. The doctor said your blood pressure was dangerously high. Why didn't you tell me you had heart problems?" "I didn't want to worry you," I admitted. "It was just a scare a few months ago." "Just a scare," he repeated, shaking his head. "Mom, you can't keep things like this from me. The doctor said living conditions like you described, cold, damp, stressful, could have exacerbated your condition." I noticed the IV in my arm, the oxygen monitor on my finger. "How long have I been here?" "About 6 hours. They want to keep you overnight for observation." "Where's Maria, the twins?" "Maria took them home for nap time. They'll visit later if you're feeling up to it." He hesitated. "Stephanie called. She wanted to come, but I told her to stay away." I nodded, too tired to think about Stephanie right now. "A social worker wants to speak with you," Jackson continued. "Standard procedure when they suspect, well, when the circumstances might involve elder neglect." I closed my eyes briefly. "I don't want to press charges against Stephanie." "That's your choice. But what she did was wrong, Mom. Criminally wrong. She's still my daughter. Despite everything, that fundamental truth remained." The social worker, Ms. Patel, came by later that afternoon. She was younger than I expected, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. "Mrs. Williams, I'd like to speak with you privately about your living situation, if that's all right." Jackson squeezed my hand before leaving us alone. "Your son tells me you've been living in a converted garage for 6 months, while believing it was a temporary arrangement," she began. I nodded, embarrassed. "And that your daughter rented out an apartment intended for you keeping the rental income for herself." "There seems to have been a misunderstanding," I said automatically, the peacekeeper role so ingrained. Ms. Patel's expression remained neutral. "Mrs. Williams, I see this more often than you might think. Adult children taking advantage of elderly parents. It often starts small and escalates." "I'm not elderly," I protested. "I'm only 63. "Forgive me," she smiled. "But the pattern remains the same. Parents who have spent a lifetime putting their children first often struggle to recognize when boundaries are being crossed. They make excuses, blame themselves, remain silent to keep the peace." Her words hit uncomfortably close to home. "Your son is very concerned. He blames himself for not checking on your living conditions more carefully." "It wasn't his fault," I said quickly. "He thought I was in the apartment he bought." Stephanie led him to believe that. "And yet, you never contacted him directly about the situation." I looked down at my hands. I didn't want to cause problems between them, and part of me wondered if he agreed with Stephanie, if he thought the garage was more appropriate for someone like me. "Someone like you," she repeated thoughtfully. "Mrs. Williams, how would you describe someone like you?" The question caught me off guard. Just a retired teacher. Nothing special. Not sophisticated or wealthy like the people at the Willows." "I see. And who taught you that you were just anything, that you were less deserving of comfort and dignity than others?" Tears welled in my eyes. A lifetime of putting others first, of accepting less of making do. It hadn't started with Stephanie. Perhaps I had modeled this acceptance of second best for her without realizing it. Your health crisis today is partly a result of physical living conditions that were genuinely harmful. Ms. Patel continued. But it's also about the emotional stress of feeling unworthy, of suppressing your own needs, of accepting treatment that diminishes your dignity. I just wanted my children to have more than I did, I whispered. A natural desire. But at some point, Mrs. Williams, you have to reclaim your own value. Not as a mother who sacrificed everything, but as a human being deserving of respect and proper care. She handed me a card. This is information about resources for seniors. Legal aid support groups counseling. Whatever you decide about pressing charges, please consider reaching out for support. You're not alone in this. After she left, I lay back against the pillows, turning her words over in my mind. Had I taught Stephanie to devalue me by devaluing myself? Had my sacrifices somehow communicated that my needs didn't matter? Jackson returned, bringing the twins, who were subdued and wide-eyed at seeing their grandmother in a hospital bed. Grandma's got some special heart medicine, Jackson explained gently. She'll be better soon. Is it because your house is too small? Emma asked innocently. Daddy said you're going to have a bigger house now. Much bigger, Jackson confirmed. Grandma's moving into a beautiful apartment with a view of the park. Can we visit you there? Ethan asked anxiously. Every week, I promised. There's a playground right across the street. Their visit brightened my spirits. But after they left with Maria, Jackson stayed behind, his expression serious. Mom, we need to talk about what happens next. I spoke with my lawyer. What Stephanie did, the forgery, the rental income, it's serious. But pursuing it legally would mean police reports, possibly court appearances. I don't want that, I said firmly. I don't want to destroy her life. She nearly destroyed yours, he reminded me gently. The doctor said if we hadn't gotten you to the hospital when we did this warning, could have become much worse. She's still my daughter, Jackson. I can't send her to jail, he sighed heavily. Then we need another solution, one that holds her accountable without legal consequences. We discussed options late into the evening. By the time Jackson left for the night, we had a plan. Not perfect, not what he wanted, but a compromise I could live with. The next morning, I was discharged with instructions to rest. Take my new medications and avoid stress. Easier said than done. Jackson drove me directly to the Willows, to the apartment that should have been mine all along. The current tenant has been notified they need to vacate, he explained, as we pulled up to the elegant building. They have 30 days, which gives us time to furnish the place properly for you. Where will I stay until then? With us in the guest room, not the garage, he added firmly. Never again. The property manager, Mike, met us in the lobby, clearly uncomfortable after learning about the fraudulent arrangement. Mr. Williams, Mrs. Williams, I can't apologize enough. We should have verified more carefully. It's not your fault, Jackson assured him. My sister can be very convincing. Mike showed us the apartment, my apartment. Even with someone else's furnishings, it was beautiful, bright and spacious, with large windows overlooking the park. The kitchen gleamed with high-end appliances. The bathroom had a walk-in shower with built-in seating. No stairs, no damp concrete floors, no space heater that couldn't be used with the microwave without blowing a fuse. It's exactly as I remembered, I whispered, overwhelmed. It's yours, Jackson said simply, as it always should have been. On our way out, we ran into an older gentleman in the elevator. Are you moving in? He asked pleasantly. Yes, I replied. Apartment 402. Wonderful, I'm in 405. Richard Simmons, retired high school principal. Ruby Williams, retired elementary school teacher. His face lit up. A fellow educator, you must join our book club. Mostly former teachers and professors. We meet Thursday evenings in the community room. Jackson squeezed my hand. As we exited the elevator, a silent, "I told you so." Perhaps I would fit in at the Willows after all. When we returned to Jackson's house, Stephanie was waiting in the driveway, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. Harold stood beside her, his expression grim. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "Harold knows everything." We moved to the back patio, away from the twins, who were playing inside with Maria. "I've spent the night thinking," Stephanie began, her voice subdued. "What I did was wrong. I see that now." Jackson snorted skeptically. "You see it now that you've been caught." "Be that as it may," Harold interjected, "we're here to make amends. I had no idea what Stephanie had done until last night. I'm appalled and deeply embarrassed." "You should be," Jackson muttered. "The rental income," Stephanie continued, "all $18,000. We'll pay it back immediately." She pulled an envelope from her purse. "It's a cashier's check for the full amount. Plus another $10,000 for the pain and suffering caused," Harold added. "We've discussed it, and Stephanie agrees this is the minimum acceptable restitution." I looked at my daughter. Perfectly groomed, even in distress, designer sunglasses hiding her eyes, Gucci bag clutched like a shield. There was no genuine remorse in her posture, only the calculation of someone minimizing damage. "Why?" I asked simply. "Why would you do this to me, Stephanie? What did I ever do to deserve such treatment from my own daughter?" She removed her sunglasses, revealing reddened eyes. "It wasn't about you, not really. It was about—" She gestured vaguely at Jackson's beautiful home, the swimming pool glittering in the backyard. "All of this. Jackson has everything. The perfect family, the successful career, the millions from his company sale. Harold and I were drowning in debt, trying to keep up appearances. The country club membership alone costs more than our mortgage. So you decided to supplement your income by stealing your mother's apartment." Jackson's tone was incredulous. "I didn't think of it that way," she insisted. "I told myself Mom was fine in the garage apartment, that she didn't need luxury, that the money was just going to waste otherwise." "You lied to us both," I said quietly. "You let me believe Jackson thought I belonged in a garage. You let him believe I was living in the apartment he bought. You created division between us." "I'm sorry," she whispered, and for the first time, I thought I detected genuine regret. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I am sorry." Jackson and I exchanged glances. We'd discussed this scenario last night. "The money is a start," Jackson said finally. "But there are other conditions." Harold nodded. "Name them." "First, therapy. Real therapy, not just a few sessions for show. You need to understand why you did this, Stephanie, or you'll justify something similar in the future." She looked as if she might argue, then nodded reluctantly. "Second, volunteer work," I added. "At the senior center downtown. 4 hours every week for a year. They need help serving meals, organizing activities, providing companionship. With old people," Stephanie looked horrified, "with valuable human beings who deserve dignity and respect, regardless of their age or income." I corrected her firmly. "Fine," she agreed, after Harold gave her a pointed look. "Third," Jackson continued, "full transparency about your financial situation. If you're in trouble, we need to know. No more keeping up appearances at the expense of integrity." This condition clearly hit hardest. Stephanie's face crumpled, and real tears appeared. "We're more than in trouble," she admitted. "We're on the verge of bankruptcy. The house, the cars, the memberships. It's all financed on credit cards and home equity loans. We're underwater on everything." Harold looked pained. "I've been passed over for partner 3 times. The writing is on the wall at the firm. My position is increasingly tenuous. Jackson's expression softened slightly. Then let's address that directly, instead of through schemes and deception. I can help you develop a realistic financial plan, but you need to be willing to make significant changes. Like what? Stephanie asked warily. Like selling the house you can't afford, downsizing to a lifestyle within your means, being honest about your circumstances instead of keeping up this exhausting facade. The old Stephanie would have rejected such suggestions immediately. But this Stephanie caught in her deception and forced to face consequences, nodded slowly. We've discussed selling already, Harold admitted. The market's good right now. We could pay off a significant portion of our debt with the proceeds. And I could help you find a position at one of my portfolio companies, Jackson offered. Not charity. You'd have to work hard and prove yourself, but a fresh start. I watched my children cautiously rebuilding bridges, and despite everything, felt a mother's hope. Stephanie had a long way to go before earning back trust, but this was a beginning. What about you, Mom? Stephanie asked hesitantly. Will you ever forgive me? I considered the question carefully. Forgiveness isn't a single moment, Stephanie. It's a process. I'm willing to start that process, but trust will take longer to rebuild. She nodded, accepting this answer as the best she could expect for now. As they prepared to leave, I took Stephanie's hand. One more thing. I'd like you to see the apartment at the Willows, to understand what you took from me. She flinched, but agreed. We set a time for the following week after the current tenant moved out. That evening, settled in Jackson's comfortable guest room, with proper heating, a real bed, and a private bathroom. I reflected on the day's events. My health was improving with proper medication. My relationship with Jackson was stronger than ever. Even with Stephanie, there was a fragile beginning of honesty that might eventually lead to healing. For the first time in months, I fell asleep without pain, without worry, without the crushing weight of silent desperation. Whatever happened next, I would face it with the dignity I had finally reclaimed. 3 months have passed since my birthday dinner revelation. So much has changed. It's hard to believe it's been such a short time. I'm fully settled in my apartment at the Willows now, and it feels more like home than anywhere I've lived since the small house Tom and I shared when the children were young. The views of the park change with the seasons. Right now, the trees are showing their first autumn colors, gold and crimson, against the deep green. My arthritis has improved significantly with proper heat and humidity control. My heart condition is stable with medication and regular checkups. The elevator means no more struggling with stairs, and the doorman ensures I feel safe, coming and going at any hour. But the physical comforts are only part of the story. The real transformation has been internal. Richard, my neighbor from 405, introduced me to the book club as promised. Most members are retired professionals, teachers, professors, doctors, librarians. Age has equalized our backgrounds, and I've found myself contributing to discussions with confidence I didn't know I possessed. Last month, they elected me club secretary, responsible for selecting every third book. I've made other connections too. There's a weekly card game in the community room that's become a highlight of my social calendar. A Tai Chi class in the park helped me meet neighbors from surrounding buildings. I even started volunteering at the local elementary school's reading program 2 mornings a week, using my teaching skills in a way that accommodates my physical limitations. Jackson and Maria bring the twins to visit every Sunday. We have a standing date for pancake breakfast, followed by an outing to the nearby playground. Emma and Ethan love exploring Grandma's Palace, as they call it. They've claimed one of the guest room closets as their personal fort, stocking it with toys and books for their visits. "This is so much better than the tiny house," Ethan observed innocently during their first visit. "You have room for all your stuff now," out of the mouths of babes. As for Stephanie, that relationship is evolving more slowly as expected. She completed her first month of therapy and has been surprisingly consistent with her volunteer commitment at the senior center. After initial resistance, she admitted last week that she's finding unexpected satisfaction in helping people who appreciate simple kindnesses. The financial reckoning has been harder. They sold their showcase home, moving into a modest townhouse closer to downtown. Harold left his prestigious law firm for a less glamorous but more secure position with one of Jackson's investment companies. The country club membership, luxury cars, and designer shopping sprees are gone. "I feel like I'm in withdrawal," Stephanie confessed during a cautious lunch date last week. "I spent so many years defining myself by what I owned, what clubs accepted me, what zip code I lived in. Without all that, I'm not sure who I am anymore." "That's exactly what you need to figure out," I told her. "Who are you beneath the trappings? What do you actually value?" She's struggling with these questions, but at least she's asking them. The facade has cracked, revealing the insecure woman beneath who never felt she was enough. In that vulnerability, I see potential for genuine growth. Our relationship may never return to what I once imagined, the close mother-daughter bond of shopping trips and shared confidences. But perhaps we're building something more authentic in its place, a relationship based on truth rather than illusions, on mutual respect rather than obligation. Last weekend, something remarkable happened. Stephanie came to visit alone. No Harold, no designer outfit, no perfect makeup. She brought a simple homemade coffee cake and asked if we could talk. "I've been thinking about something my therapist said," she began hesitantly, "about how children often absorb unspoken lessons from their parents. How sometimes, when a parent sacrifices everything, always puts themselves last, it teaches children that the parent doesn't deserve better." I nodded, remembering Ms. Patel's similar observation in the hospital. "I watched you work yourself to exhaustion for years," Stephanie continued. "Never buying anything new for yourself, always saying you didn't need things. I internalized this idea that you didn't deserve nice things, that you were meant to give, not receive." She looked down at her hands. "It's not an excuse for what I did, but I'm trying to understand the twisted thinking that made it seem acceptable." For the first time, I felt we were having an honest conversation, not one where I carefully managed her feelings or she performed the role of perfect daughter. "I played my part in that dynamic," I acknowledged. "I was so afraid of being a burden that I became invisible. I taught you that my needs didn't matter by acting as if they didn't." We talked for hours, really talked about patterns established decades ago that had shaped us both in unhealthy ways, about the possibility of creating something different moving forward, about forgiveness as a path rather than a destination. When she left, we hugged, a real embrace, not the air kisses she'd favored for years. It felt like a beginning. The greatest lesson from this painful experience has been the power of speaking truth, of refusing to accept less than I deserve, out of fear or misplaced maternal sacrifice. At 63, I'm finally learning that my worth isn't determined by what I give to others, but is inherent in who I am. This morning, I attended the Residents' Council meeting and volunteered to organize the holiday charity drive. As I looked around the room at these people who have become my community, I realized something profound. I belong here. Not because my son is wealthy enough to provide this place, but because I have value, wisdom, and contributions to make. The garage apartment seems like a distant memory now, though it was only months ago. Sometimes life's most important lessons come wrapped in painful packages. The betrayal I experienced opened the door to a level of self-respect I might never have found otherwise. If you're watching this and feeling unappreciated, invisible, or taken for granted, please hear me. Your worth isn't determined by how much you sacrifice or how little you ask for yourself. Speaking your truth isn't selfish, it's necessary. Dignity isn't a luxury for the privileged few. It's a fundamental right for everyone, regardless of age or background. Have you ever stayed silent to keep the peace, only to lose your own inner peace in the process? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more stories of hard-won wisdom. Your experiences matter, your voice deserves to be heard, and your dignity is non-negotiable, at any age, under any circumstances. Thank you for listening to my journey. Remember, it's never too late for a new beginning. I'm living proof of that.